What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Young Guns podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about another contending team, the New York Rangers. And why the New York Rangers? Why not Colorado? Why not Tampa Bay or Washington? Well, like we stated in our first episode of Why Are They So Good, we're talking about teams that are doing exceptionally good and that are exceeding expectations. So essentially, you have the Carolina Hurricanes who um, had like some weird off season. No one really knew where they would have finished this season because they lost a lot of key pieces. But look at them now; they're a top three team in the league. You had the Florida Panthers made a lot of significant moves in the offseason. They were kind of projected to be a top three team, but they got eliminated in the first round against Tampa Bay last year. But look at them now. And now we're talking about the New York Rangers who failed to make the playoffs last year because of the whole Canadian division and whatever the whole COVID basically thing kind of screwed up everything. And the Rangers in the normal standings would have clinched a playoff spot, but unfortunately, with the divisions that they made last year, they failed to make a playoff spot. But this year, there's no worrying about that, Ranger fans, because you definitely will make the playoffs. And we're going to be discussing why the Rangers are so good today and who they're interested heading towards the trade deadline, according to what was said on Sportsnet and other news outlets concerning the New York Rangers.
You talked about why the Rangers are so good. Well, I think you look at the team, you look at who they have. Their best guy, and in my opinion, probably one of the best defensemen in the league. They have Adam Fox, Norris Trophy winner last year. Point a game player this year, 42 points in 40 games. He's been great. Artemi Panarin and Mika Zibanejad have been very good too. But the one guy that I think has made the difference for the Rangers, and I don't think he gets a lot of credit or a lot of talk, but this guy's really performed and stepped up a lot. Chris Kreider, he's got 25 goals this season. He's been really, really good for the Rangers. He's on that contract right now. Obviously, the term is not the greatest, but I'm saying that contract right now, it looks like a steal because he's playing fantastic. And he's been a big part of the reason why the Rangers have been so successful. But the other reason why, Igor Shesterkin, he's been one of the best goalies in the league this season. He's been solid. He's really kept the Rangers in it. And the other thing too, and their biggest addition of the season, in my opinion, and the reason why they are where they are, Gerard Gallant. One of the best coaches
Yeah.
in the NHL, in my opinion. When they brought him in, I knew they were going to be successful right off the bat. He's a fantastic coach, and he gets the best out of his players. And you can see it. You can see it with Kreider. You can see it with Fox. You can see it with, those guys too. And even the young guys. A lot of the young guys are starting to pick up their game a little bit too.
Yeah,
So,
Lafreniere has been one of them that's really done amazing under Gallon, whereas
well,
last year under Quinn, he
he's played
struggled
better.
a lot.
Yeah, Laf's played a little bit better this season too. Obviously, now he's been out with injury, but he's played a little bit better, and hopefully the second half of the year for Lafreniere can become even better because he's got all the talent in the world. It's just a matter of putting everything together and finding a way to get points.
I think we're overlooking also Truba. Truba's been playing pretty solid, and I gotta say Ryan Strome too. He's looking really good, actually.
Yeah, and it's contract year for Ryan Strome. There was a huge debate on whether they sign Zibanejad and let Strome go, or they trade him, or vice versa. They got Zibanejad signed to, if I'm not mistaken, an 8-year extension. Strome has yet to be signed, so I think that's going to be resolved whether or not they sign him or let him go during the offseason, but he definitely will be on the team heading into the playoffs. Gorgiev as well really stepped up his game, even though he requested a trade at the end of last season, sorry. And, whenever Shesterkin was out, he played on top of his game. He really, it seemed like the Rangers, they don't really have any holes, to be honest. Everyone's playing to their capabilities. There's still Capo Caco, who's up in the air, underperforming, I guess, as a top pick a couple years ago in the draft of the New York Rangers. And going back to Chris Kreider, he was supposed to be traded a couple years ago at the deadline. There was significant interest in him, and instead they signed him to an extension. And let's say if they wouldn't have signed him to an extension, they would have traded him. I don't think they would have been as good as they are right now because, like Lucas said, he's one of the key pieces on his New York Rangers team. And ever since he signed an extension, he's been very consistent. And honestly, he should be their captain for next season because he's been there the longest. and he's proven that whenever the team is down or something, he's someone you could count on. He could play the first line, second line, or third line. Third line is not ideal, essentially, but first or second line minutes is where he's at. And putting him on the power play, whether it's the first unit or the second unit, this guy could play everywhere. So he's a team player in my opinion, despite of what he's done in the past to goalies and stuff. You know,
I was
uh,
gonna mention that.
you
I
know,
was like, he's excellent at injuring all-star goalies
No, he's good at
so
running. He's good
in
at running into them.
critical games.
He's good at
But
running
yeah,
into them too.
yeah.
So, for me, he's my pick to be the next New York Rangers captain. Um, looking at him, Fox as well, 42 points in 40 games right now, exceptional numbers. He's going to be a Norris candidate this season once again. Whether if he wins it or not, that's up in the air because there's other names that he's competing against, such as Hedman and Makar. Um,
Yeah,
Zabinajad, last season wasn't that great, but this season finally found this game once again, and I think that's a huge plus because with the addition of Gallant, I think it really stabilized a lot of things, and a lot of players are being able to play consistent. A lot of players are know their place on the team now.
yeah,
I think Quinn was the only piece on that team that really was holding the New York Rangers back. And now adding Gallant, it shows that this team is an elite team, and that's why they're contenders, in my opinion. Yeah, I would say that Jeff Gordon, who's currently the executive vice president of the Montreal Canadiens, was a good GM for the New York Rangers, but they let him go for various reasons last season, a lot to do with the whole Panarin and Putin situation and the whole kicking Buchnevich's ass and Panarin's ass towards the end of the season as well when they were fighting for a playoff spot. So, a lot of comments were made in defense of his players, and the league didn't like that. So, I guess the Rangers felt compelled to let him go. But um, if I'm not mistaken, their general manager is Chris Jury, and he's done an
yeah.
excellent job so far.
From the Rangers.
Um, and I'm really looking forward to what he does at the trade deadline. I don't know if you guys want to start talking about who they've
I
been
just
connected to.
I just wanted to bring up one point because we talked about the Rangers' success, right? But they're fifth in the league in goals against, which means they're one of the best defensive teams in the league. And I think a lot of the reason that is the way it is, right, is like Pizzuto mentioned, Jacob Trouba has been really good this season. But one guy that really impressed me, and I was watching a little bit of the Rangers game yesterday against the Leafs, and he really, really impressed me. Ryan Lindgren, really
I thought you were gonna
good.
say Ryan Reeves scored
No,
a
no, well,
multi-game,
Ryan Reeves too, but I'm saying like Ryan
a
Lindgren.
multi-game.
Yeah, Ryan Lindgren impressed me a lot, and the reason why is because this guy, he's young, 23 years old, still got a lot of potential. But next to Adam Fox, like you can see the chemistry that those two guys have, and to me, like he's really really underrated. Obviously, yes, Adam Fox helps the situation, but for him too, like he's solid. He's really good defensively, and I love everything that he brings to the Rangers. And I think he's been a key piece for the Rangers' success moving forward. And obviously, Shesterkin standing on his head helps that whole situation as well because he's been fantastic in every single way. And Georgiev too, 908 save percentage for him this season, better numbers than he did last year. And he's a guy that the Rangers can rely upon too. So that's always good to see for the Rangers.
And I'd also say before we head into the trade candidates for the New York Rangers, heading towards the trade deadline, um, you know, Sabinajad and Panarin being split last season really hurt their odds. Um, their defensive game too hurt their odds, which both have like improved. Zabinajad's game has improved. The whole Putin situation, literally abducting Panarin or threatening his family and so on threatened
I'm
the
sorry, I don't.
season.
It's not funny, but I mean, like, it's just we've been making jokes all year about
Yeah,
this.
I know. They're clearly not best friends, but
Yeah, they're not.
a lot of drama surrounding New York Rangers hurt the New York Rangers' chances last year, and this year there hasn't been that. Everyone's been consistent. There's no drama. The Tony D'Angelo thing really hurt them last
Yeah,
season
it's
too,
true.
and now he's
Imagine if
gone too.
imagine if they would still have him, how good this defense would be.
Yeah,
Like, it would be even
if
better.
he would have been a good boy, but unfortunately he wasn't, so they got rid of him. So a lot of drama hurt the New York Rangers, and they were still good enough to make the playoffs. Imagine if that drama wasn't there and they had Gallant last season, and instead of Hughes, instead of Quinn. Sorry, I was thinking about Quinn Hughes. My bad. So yeah, so a lot of things that to look forward to in this season that are not plagued by last season's drama and problems. And yeah, so it's looking bright for their future heading forward. And they definitely will make a playoff spot. But starting with the trade candidates, so we got a couple, and we also have a trade scenario that was proposed by someone that I saw online that really caught my eye, and I think it definitely makes sense. We're gonna start off with Thomas Hurdle. So he's 28 years old. He's in the final year of his contract, which sees him being paid 5.625. Oh my God, $5.6 million. Hurdle, he's emerged as the most likely trade candidate because he's been such in demand because there's so many teams that need a second line center. Boston is one of them. You have Minnesota, and you also have the New York Rangers who could utilize him as a winger or a center. The thing is, though, is that Hurdle's been playing so well with Timo Meyer this season that there's a very high chance that he doesn't get traded and he signs an extension because Timo Meyer would probably be upset that his center that he's doing so well with would be traded. I also wanted to say that obviously they would have to give up a first round pick and more to acquire Thomas Hurdle, and he has a no trade clause, and he only has three teams on the list. So it's really up to him if he want where he wants to go. And I think the New York Rangers, if he were to ask to be traded, the New York Rangers would definitely be on his list because of how good they are this season, and they could fit his contract um, this year. So I don't know what you guys think about Thomas Hurdle possibly being an addition to the New York Rangers. Is it possible, or is it unlikely? And does it make sense for them?
Honestly, I don't see Thomas Hurdle leaving the San Jose Sharks. I honestly see him re-signing there. They're not that bad of a team. I mean, they need a few little fixes here and there. But there's a lot of older guys that I think they should get rid of before him. But him and Timo Meyer, I think, is a good fit. And like you said, if Hurdle leaves, maybe Timo Meyer is going to be a little upset about that. And it's a big hole that if they get rid of him, and he's not that old, he's 28,
Yeah.
like you mentioned. So I don't see any rush to move him. I would try to sign him, but if you really know that he's not going to stick around, then you might as well give him up.
He's been one of
So
their best players for San Jose ever since he got drafted. Very consistent player as well, and I think he's very underappreciated and underrated, because of who he plays for, and playing behind guys like Thornton, Marlowe, Kane, Pavelski for years. He was really overshadowed, and now he's really
Yeah.
showing what he's capable of, especially playing with Timo Meyer, who finally has found his game this season. He's been very consistent as well. So I would be very dumb for them to split that duel, to be honest. And I think it makes sense for the San Jose Sharks to sign him as soon as possible and not trade him unless they get something that's like insane as an offer heading to the trade deadline.
Well, I think like Chris said before, right? Like San Jose right now, San Jose's at a playoff spot. I know that like it's a little bit complicated there in the West, but at the moment they're sitting in a playoff spot. And I think if you're San Jose, and if you're Thomas Hurdle, right, like you mentioned before about Timo Meyer, him and Timo Meyer have had a really good chemistry this season, and I think that you can kind of see the trend in San Jose going up a little bit, like how well that team's played lately. And you can see that there's some promise and there's some upside there. And I think if you're Thomas Hurdle, you see that, and you see that there's progression being made. And if you're Hurdle, maybe you decide, you know what, I'm going to sign in San Jose because I believe in this group. And Timo Meyer is having a fantastic season. So is Thomas Hurdle, and so there's no reason for him to leave unless he really wants to go for a Stanley Cup,
Yeah,
right?
and
Then you
and,
can
and you
see
have
it.
top prospects like Dallin and Eklund that are going to be on the team by next year, hands down. I don't see them
Yeah.
not being on the team. They're going to have a spot on the team starting next season. So they're just going to keep on getting stronger. Yeah, they're going to be young, but I think having Hurdle and Timo Meyer as the young veterans to lead the new San Jose Sharks moving forward, I think makes sense for them. So another guy that's been highly linked to the Rangers, and he played for the Rangers before, JT Miller. So he's 20 years old. He has 1 year left. He's seen being paid $5.25 million. So he's an upcoming UFA. Um, According to Frank Savarelli, that appeared on Canucks Central, he stated that the New York Rangers have been one of the teams that are all over JT Miller, and they really would like his services back on the New York Rangers. So of course, if they acquire Miller, it would more likely mean that Ryan Strome would not be coming back. So I think they'd see JT Miller as a potential replacement for Strome, and in my opinion, I think he's better than Strome. Miller, he could play the wing, but he could also play the center position. So that makes sense too. Same thing with basically Hurdle. So it seems like they're trying to find someone that could play dual positions essentially. Someone that acts somewhat as a Swiss Army knife for the New York Rangers. Someone that could play in multiple positions and in certain occasions as well, just in case there's injuries or they want to shuffle the lines up a little bit.
Listen, I don't know why everybody's saying that Ryan Strome might not get signed next year because they have quite a lot of cap space. I mean, even if they do acquire JT Miller or Hurdle, actually, well, Hurdle would probably be harder to pay for. But a guy like JT Miller, I would see them affording Ryan Strome and JT Miller both on the team. So I
Yeah,
wouldn't see,
but
I think centermen are the least of their concerns. I think they should go get like one more pretty solid defenseman. And I'm going to mention, well, someone that we've mentioned before. I think Ben Sherratt would be pretty good for the team. He's the
Yeah.
cheapest. He's the cheapest option. And if he does want to stick around, which they're a contending team, I don't see why he wouldn't. I don't see his contract being more than $5 million. So
But
it's
there's
going to be
actually someone that was officially connected to the New York Rangers, but we're gonna let
okay.
Luca talk first
well,
before we mention it.
well, I think like you said, right? You talk about cap space a little bit. I mean, I don't know how much cap space the Rangers are going to have next season because Zibanejad's getting paid 3.5 million more. They signed Ryan Reeves for another year at the same amount.
Well,
Adam
they're
Fox
they're they're
is going for.
projected to have 7.1.
Yeah, but it's because the thing is, right? Adam, that's what I'm saying. But like Adam Fox is going from 925,000 to 9.5 million. So there's a big raise there. And obviously, the other thing is too. Yes, they have the cap space to sign Ryan Strome, but if you're the team, is Ryan Strome? Are you willing to sign him and hope to keep the core intact, or do you want to upgrade that? And I have a feeling maybe with the Rangers and the cap space that they have, they may want to upgrade that. And obviously, JT Miller is a good option for them too. He's played well in Vancouver, but he's already been a Ranger, right? And we saw how that went when he was a Ranger last time. Do the Rangers want to explore that again and see if he wants to come back? I'm not so sure, but I mean, I know there's been talks and interests and whatever. For me personally, I think if you're the Rangers, you go for a defenseman. I know that they're top 5 in the league in defensemen, but like Chris said last time, defense wins you championships. And I think for them, one more defenseman puts them in the conversation of potentially being a cup contender and going far. They've got offense. They've got guys that need to step up a little bit more. Lafreniere, Capo Caco, who, people still believe in. And obviously there's a bunch of other guys too. Barclay Goodrow's another one who's won 2 Stanley Cups, in Tampa Bay. So he knows what it's like to win a Stanley Cup. And obviously you've got Ryan Reeves, who's a tough guy. And even him, he's had a career year this season.
Yeah,
Despite
they really improved their depth during the off season. They got bigger and I would say more playoff experience and leadership in the locker room, something
yeah,
that they were lacking last year because their bottom 6 were all consisting of rookies and stuff, very young players.
that's it.
So
I agree.
that was a big addition for the off season. But also I wanted to state that they have a lot of trade assets. They have Hito, who hasn't really found this game yet. There's Kraftstov, who's been wanting out of New York for a while now. And, I think they're going to be willing to also get rid of their first round pick this year. They seem like they're very competitive, the New York Rangers. They will make a playoff. They will make the playoffs, so they will clinch a playoff spot in no time. There's no doubt about that. And there's one more player that I would like to mention concerning defense, because I know you guys were saying that defense wins you championships. And one guy that's been officially linked, according to Jeff Marek and Elliot Freeman, is uh, Jacob Chikrin. So again, we know the asking price.
It's ridiculous, the asking price.
Yeah, young
I don't know if you
player,
saw it. It's
high end
freaking crazy.
prospect, and a first round pick.
It's
So
it's
that
not.
kind of fits what the New York Rangers have. They could get rid of Capo Caco, Kraftstov, and a first round pick, and you get Chikrin right off the bat. Think about it.
Yeah, but yeah,
And I think
definitely.
they win that deal, in my opinion.
There's definitely the things the Rangers can do, right? And obviously, if you're Arizona, you look at the Rangers team, you look at what they have and whatever. There's definitely some options too. There's also another guy that you didn't really mention, but again, you have to look at Capo Caco, right? He hasn't really played that well. I don't know if Arizona's going to take that chance. Kravtsov's an interesting one because he
But
hasn't
he is
really
a
been
young
given a
player,
chance.
so he fits the description.
But there's a guy, but there's a guy that I think Arizona would definitely be interested in. And you're trading a defenseman, so you want to get a defenseman back. Braden Schneider is the one that's really interesting as well. They drafted him this year. He's already played 3 games in the NHL. He's looked good. Maybe Arizona decides, you know what, we'll give you an elite proven defenseman, and you can give us a guy that you already drafted and has potential to be that as well. So there's options there for the Rangers. Like you said, they're willing to trade their first round pick, so I don't think that's an issue for the Rangers. But Chikrin's a guy that I think if he goes to the Rangers, then
Oh,
you've got
it's over, man. They're
then
my
you've got a
favorites to win the cup
situation.
if that happens.
Yeah, well, then you've got a situation where it's Adam Fox and Ryan Lindgren, and you've got Trouba who found his partner in Chikrin, and you can build your team like that. And so the Rangers are going to have a stacked top 4 at that point, and then you've already got an elite goaltender in Shesterkin, and you've already got an elite forward core, and you've got a coach that can win you a cup. At that point, anything's possible. So there's definitely things there to be interested about. So I think Chikrin's one that the Rangers, if they actively pursue, I could definitely see something where if they get Chikrin, like they can definitely win the cup. Absolutely, like no question about it.
So I'm gonna ask you guys what you think about this trade proposal that was actually proposed by Jeff Marek of Sportsnet. So essentially, you have Jake DeBrusk, 25 years old, hasn't really found this game. Was drafted in the first round a couple years ago by Boston. Very inconsistent. Doesn't seem like he's part of their future moving forward. Doesn't really fit the Boston Bruins' mold anymore. And then you have Philip Hiddle. So he's 22. He's very talented. You can't take that away from him. But he's continued to struggle down the middle. So I mean that's been an issue for them too. So they've put him on the wing essentially, opposed to the center where he was originally drafted. Uh, so the proposal was, what do you think of a DeBrusk for Hiddle swap? Because both players seem not to be a fit for their respective teams
Like a one
moving
for one.
forward.
Yeah, I would see that happening. I mean, how old is Jake DeBrusk?
25, and then
And
Hiddle is 22.
yeah, I would see maybe Rangers maybe adding something like a little sweetener, maybe like a 4th round pick or something, or like a 5th maybe. But
Yeah,
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 I see that happening. I mean, listen, they both players need a change of scenery. The Boston Bruins need another center, so maybe they could
yeah.
try that guy out as a center. And the Rangers, I mean, they're getting Jake DeBrusk. I mean, listen, he's a good established player. I mean, he's not that bad. He's not consistent, sure, but I mean, he's a great player. He brings value to a team, and he's been to the Stanley Cup if I'm not mistaken, or am I?
No, yeah, you're wrong. He hasn't.
He
He
hasn't.
hasn't. No,
Oh,
he was
okay,
drafted after that.
Actually, yes, he has.
He
Yes, he has.
was?
You're
he
right. Yes, in
has.
2018.
Yeah,
Yes,
Oh,
you're
yeah,
Chris.
right.
exactly.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm pretty
Right.
sure. I mean, if
Yeah,
I'm
you're
going
right.
Nice
You're right.
take.
You're right.
so I'm pretty sure he's been to the Stanley Cup. So I
Yes.
mean, listen, I mean, I would take the chance. I mean, you're not gambling much. Either team is gambling this. You're trading a dollar for a dollar. So you know,
And essentially, he's not going to cost a lot, right? So,
yeah, I don't more than $5 million. I don't.
and
Yeah,
an extension seems possible as well, right? Because of his inconsistent play, he's not really proven. He doesn't have the same value that he once had
Yeah.
when he started off. So they could definitely sign him for like a $3.5 million contract, $3 million contract for like 2 years or 3 years. And I think
Yeah.
he's going to grow with the New York Rangers essentially. But I think it's a good proposal by Jeff Marek. I really like that deal. They get a center, Boston, something that they needed ever since David Krejci left. You can't survive with Eric Holla and Bergeron forever.
There's Charlie Coyle too.
And there's Charlie Coyle. Holla is a third line center, and so is Charlie Coyle. I think Hiddle. I'm not saying he's a second line center at the moment, but he could potentially grow into one and develop into one.
Yeah.
Because I think Boston is really good at development. We see in the guys that came out of their AHL team and their prospect pool, and honestly, they're fantastic in my opinion. And then they get an experienced winger who has playoff experience. So the New York Rangers and the Boston Bruins essentially both win. But I have two questions for you before we end this episode. Who does the New York Rangers acquire based off of your own philosophy and based off like what we've discussed and so on, and based off like trade rumors and basically who's been connected to the New York Rangers, and how far do the New York Rangers make it into
Well,
into the NHL playoffs this season?
in terms of who they acquire, right? I do think a situation where Jake DeBrusk could end up in New York. That one I could definitely see happening. I think they do try to acquire him because I think if they want to get another depth forward who can play on the third line, maybe you put him on the power play. You try to see if you can get you can rejuvenate him a little bit. Maybe he comes in and does really well. There's an opportunity there for him. The one that I think the Rangers should go for is they should target one of the defensemen, whether it's Ben Sherratt, whether it's John Klingberg, whether it's Jacob Chikrin. Any of those three guys should be on the Rangers' radar. And obviously, Sherratt and Klingberg are more rental players, and there's no guarantee that they resign. Whereas with Chikrin, you're getting a guy who's already got term on his contract, whatever. But I could see a situation where they go for one of the three, whether it's Sherratt, Klingberg, or Chikrin, and so that makes the Rangers situation a little bit more interesting. In terms of the forward core, I mean, they may decide to go for someone big. If they want to trade Hito, there's a possibility that maybe if they really want to make a playoff run, maybe they decide to go for Claude Giroux. There's an opportunity there
Yeah,
too.
we spoke about that
And
in the
so,
trade destinations for Claude Giroux, that he's been
yeah,
linked to New York Rangers, and again
so
plays the left wing and the center. That seems like a common trend
yeah,
with the New York Rangers and what they want to acquire. Same thing
and
with
so
Hurdle and same thing with Miller.
so what's interesting about that too is I think if we're talking about where the Rangers can end up, I personally think they're a team that maybe they're one or two pieces away from a Stanley Cup, but I think they'll go second, third round. I think they'll give a good fight. I think they'll get past round one pretty easily if they play even if they play Washington or Carolina or Pittsburgh. I think they'll be able to beat them. Second and third round is where I see the Rangers this season. But it depends. If they make a move and it's a big, significant move, then I can definitely see them going further than that.
How about you,
What about
Chris?
you, Chris?
Honestly, I think listen, if I'm their general manager, I'm gonna go with Jake DeBrusk is 100% a move I would make, especially if it's only gonna cost me Hiddle, is that how you
Yeah,
pronounce
Yeah,
his name?
Hurdle.
Hiddle. Uh, so I'm for sure doing that move. And honestly, I'm not saying this because I'm biased and I want the Habs to make a trade, but I think Ben Sherratt is the cheapest and best value you could possibly get for your team. And if you get those two players at the trade deadline, and obviously I would make the Ben Sherratt deal if it comes with a contract, like trade and sign. I would do
Yeah,
that.
it's possible. I don't think he's gonna
You know,
cost that much, and
so
for what he's able to give as an NHL defenseman, his playoff experience and the type of player that he is, yo, that's fantastic. You have
yeah,
Jacob Chuba and him, who both played in Winnipeg, so that's kind of funny too.
yeah,
I wonder if they're going to be paired up. I don't think they would because I think they're both heavy guys, so I don't really think they would complement each other's style. But maybe it could work as a pairing. But for me, um, oh wait, so sorry, your
Well,
playoff
I was
prediction.
gonna say
Yeah,
I
yeah,
see
yeah.
them going to the semifinals. I don't know if they get to face Florida, but let's just say Florida and the Rangers meet each other at the conference finals. I would see. It all depends on which goalie plays better, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they're both
If
Russian too,
if
so
Bobrovsky lights it up, I mean, I think Florida has it. But if Shesterkin brings it too, it would be. I think it could go either way,
yeah, and
in my
we've seen that with
opinion.
Russian goalies. As good as they are, they could be very inconsistent too. So I think it really comes down to the goalie situation because the defense, I would say, they're very even in comparison, and their offensive core too is very even in comparison. Even though I think
yeah.
Florida might have a slight advantage because of their depth, but when it comes in terms of trades for me, I think they're gonna do two moves, and I think they're gonna actually like really go for a cup run because I think they're very confident in the team that they have this year. So essentially see two possible deals happening: the Hiddle and the Brusque swap because it makes sense, and I think they're gonna be parting ways with Capo Caco, Kraftstov, and a first round pick for Jacob Chikrin. And if they make those two moves, they are my favorites to win the Stanley Cup. because of how significant those two moves are. And I think they would easily be the trade deadline winners heading out of the trade deadline. But, again, you still have to compete with teams like Tampa, Florida, the Hurricanes, Vegas. They're all
Colorado.
like hard to beat teams, and these teams have playoff experience. The Rangers are the only team that haven't been in the playoffs for a couple of years now, so we don't really know what they're gonna do in terms of how far they make it. But again, depending who they face, and if they get lucky, and if there's surprises that happen, at most I see them going to the Eastern Conference Finals. I do not see them winning a cup unless they make those two significant trades, and if they play lights out, and it really depends on their goalie as well. But
Yeah,
yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you so much, guys, once again for following our podcast. I know it's been heating up when it comes to subscribers and stuff and content. Been very consistent. There's been a lot to talk about. So we just wanted to say thank you so much for subscribing. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe. Tell anybody uh, that loves hockey to check our channel out. Maybe they like it, maybe they don't. Really up to them. And if there's any Ranger fans out there, what do you guys think? Who's going to get traded? Who should they go after? Who should they trade from their respective team, and how far do the New York Rangers make it heading into this NHL playoffs? Well, thank you so much, guys, once again. Until the next episode.